Hey, this is Dustin, and today I'm going to be talking about Mont Tremblant in Quebec, Canada. Before I start the main review, I'm going to get into some of the stats. So, Mont Tremblant has one mountain with four distinct slopes, 2116 of vertical drop, 102 trails, longest run is 3.7 miles, and the whole mountain is 775 acres. 178 of which is all glades. So Tremblant has 22 easy or green circle trails, 31 blue squares, and 49 diamonds and double black, or what they call very difficult and extreme. So the lift infrastructure at Tremblant is honestly very impressive. They have two high-speed gondolas. The main one is called the Express Gondola in English. Honestly, I don't speak French, so I'm probably going to butcher a lot of these names, but this lift goes from the main base area all the way up to the summit, and it services just about any kind of trail you could imagine, from blacks to double black groomers to blue cruisers to greens that go all the way down either side of the mountain. Also, there are a few glades on the front side, and you can also ski down the entire backside from this lift. So from this lift, you can ski almost any trail at Tremblant, with the one exception of trails on the edge. So this is probably the best lift to get on early in the morning, as long as there aren't too many lines. The other gondola basically serves as a shuttle from the main base area to the base area at the Soleil, which has the casino and also the Le Soleil lift. And again, I'm probably butchering all these French names, but this lift is pretty good if you want to go to the casino and you're staying in the village, or if you want to go back to your condo during the ski day, or if you want to go to some of the restaurants there. It's not really a ski lift as much as it is a transport between the two base areas on the front side. So Tremblant has 6 high-speed quads. I'm going to go left to right on the south side and then left to right on the north side. The first one is called the Flying Mile. This goes on the south side, on the front side, about halfway up the mountain onto kind of a separate peak that ends halfway up the mountain. This lift services the main large terrain park, as well as a couple black diamonds, double black diamonds, as well as a couple green trails that'll take you back to the base. This lift will take you close to the bottom of the TGV lift, which goes to the summit, but this is a decent lift to hop on in the beginning of the day. It starts basically right next to the gondola and goes halfway up the south side. The next high-speed quad is the TGV lift. As I mentioned, this lift goes from halfway up the south side to the summit of Tremblant. This lift services a lot of double black diamonds and black diamond groomers, as well as any of the other terrain you can access from the summit. So I would say the majority of people sessioning this lift are probably going to be skiing double blacks and blacks and maybe one blue. But I think that this lift can be just as useful in getting from the main base via the Flying Mile lift to the top of the mountain if there's a long lineup at the gondola, or this is a good lift a session if you're more of an expert skier. So the next lift on the front side is the Le Soleil high-speed quad. This lift goes from the other base, which is right by the casino at Tremblant, and goes to the summit. So this is a pretty long high-speed quad that's just about as long as the main gondola from the main base. So this lift services mostly black diamond terrain, but there is one blue and one green that go from the top to the bottom if you want to session this lift. There are also a couple of glades, and one of the Highlights of this lift is a trail called Ryan Boss that actually ends up back at the main base, but you access it from this lift. And this is pretty cool because it goes kind of through this little canyon, and it's a double black trail, but it's not extremely difficult. But the views of all the cliffs on either side are really cool, and not a ton of people go down it. So I was able to find fresh snow on this trail even a few days after a storm. Also, there are a few main black groomers that go from top to bottom, and like I said, that long windy green trail. On the backside or the north side, there are 3 high-speed quads as well. The first one is the Duncan Express. So this lift is mostly going to service blacks and double blacks, but there are a few routes that you can get down on blues, but these are going to be more kind of long, windy, flat trails. So I would say the main kind of audience for this lift, if you're going to session it, is going to be for blacks and double blacks. That being said, there are a few easier black groomers that most skiers will be able to get down. This lift goes all the way from the bottom of the north side to the top, so I think this is the only lift that does that. But this is a pretty good lift to session, especially because of some of the glades at the top and then some of the trails you can get halfway down. This is a pretty long run for the backside and services some of the best terrain at Tremblant. The next lift on the north side, it's a high-speed quad, is called the Expo Express. So this also goes from the base area of the north side. It starts right next to Duncan, but it goes only about half as high. That being said, it services a separate peak, so for the top 1/3 of the lift or so, you're only going to be able to get to those trails from the Expo. So if you take the Duncan or the Little Thomas, you're not going to be able to get to the top of the Expo. So this is especially important for glades like Buzz and Dynography. And there are some of the steepest trails at Tremblant right under this lift, especially Dynamite and Expo. These trails are really steep and sometimes groomed, sometimes not, but this lift is probably geared more toward experts, but you can still get down the sides. There are several blues that go off the top of it as well, and you can kind of take the long way around no matter what level of skier you are. The next high-speed quad on the backside or the north side is the Lowell Thomas lift. I believe this is the newest lift at Tremblant. It's a high-speed quad and it was put in 2018. This replaced an old fixed grip triple, and it was sorely needed in this area of the mountain. This is probably the best lift for intermediates and maybe even beginners. There are several blues that run off the top of this lift, and they're a lot of fun, even for more advanced skiers. And I recommend this lift to anyone who goes to Tremblant, especially because of how nice and new it is. And this lift is really unique because it has separate footrest for each skier, so there's 4, which is a pretty unique thing, and I don't think I've ever been on another lift like that. Okay, so after covering all 6 of the high-speed quads, there is one fixed grip quad, which is on the north side. It's the Edge quad chair. This is one of my favorite chairs at Tremblant because it services mostly double black diamond terrain, and it has some of the best glades at Tremblant. There's not a whole lot of terrain over here, but what's over here is really good, especially if you're an expert skier. And even if you're not, you should be able to get down the trail called Action. And this is a pretty mellow black diamond trail that will take you to 2 blue square glades on either side once you get further down. I really recommend this lift to anyone who goes to Tremblant who's interested in skiing glades, because there are about 6-7 glades over here and only about 2 trails. There's one triple at Tremblant, and this is called the Porte du Soleil, for lack of a better pronunciation. This lift is basically geared toward people staying in the condos toward the center of the mountain that can't get down to the main base area. So if you're staying in the center, you can ski down a short trail to this lift and take the lift up, and you'll be able to go left to the main base or right to the casino base. And this is an easy way to get to the mountain if you're staying in the condos, or if the main parking lot is full, there's another parking lot right at the bottom of this triple, and it'll get you on the mountain pretty quickly. There are also 3 surface lifts at Tremblant, all 3 of which are right around the main base, and they're basically for first-time skiers or beginner skiers, and they're all pretty centrally located. 2 are on the left side, and 1 is on the right side of the main base. There's also one cabriolet lift, which is a 5-person standing gondola that goes from the parking lot or the bottom of the main village up to where the gondola and the flying mile lift are. So this lift is an effective way to get from where you park or maybe from your hotel up to the main mountain. There's also one green run that goes from the main base down to this run, so at the end of the day, you can ski back to where you're staying or back to your car. This lift is also free to anyone who gets on it, so you don't need a lift ticket to ride. And a lot of people take it from the parking lot to the top of the village and then walk down through the village. So as for the pros and the positive aspects of Tremblant, I would say the number one most important thing is the village. There's no other ski village in the East Coast that even comes close to as cool as Tremblant. This is really a French style village in French Canada, and there are plenty of upscale restaurants and nightclubs and really cool retail shopping, and the village is just gorgeous. It's probably the coolest ski village I've ever been to in my life. Another pro is the snowmaking. They've invested really heavily in upgrading their snowmaking in the past couple years. I think they have over 1,000 snow guns and the capacity to blow snow on several trails at once. So a lot of the main avenues are going to be really, really well covered from early winter to early spring. And this is really important on the East Coast, especially with more variable weather that's been coming through in the past few years. So this next one could be considered a pro or a con depending on your perspective. Tremblant is owned by Alterra, so they have unlimited access for the Icon Pass, which is a great deal if you're going to be going here more than a few days. This has proved to provide some extra crowds as compared to previously, but I think overall it's increasing access and more people get to enjoy the mountain. Tremblant can be extremely cold, even to the point where you might not want to ski, but this can be a pro when, like earlier this month, all of New England and the Mid-Atlantic got a ton of rain and Tremblant got all snow. So for that week, because of its longitude and of how cold it was, it had the best conditions pretty much anywhere on the East Coast. So this is definitely a pro in preserving good snow and even in preventing rain and keeping conditions good for longer. Tremblant's lift system is also second to none, considering they have 6 high-speed quads, 2 high-speed gondolas, and a cabriolet. I am hard-pressed to find a better lift system anywhere on the East Coast. So now for the cons. No mountain is perfect, and Tremblant is no exception. So I would say the first one is how far it is from major cities in the U.S. It's very far from, New York and Boston and Philadelphia, places like this. I would definitely say it's worth a drive from these places, but there are certainly several very competent mountains much closer. It is very close to Montreal and, places like Burlington, Vermont, but they also have other mountains south of them that are just as good and just as close. Lodging prices can be expensive, especially in the main village, but you can get decent places that are 15-20 minutes away for very reasonable prices, although I would say it's probably worth it if you have the funds to stay in the main village, just because of the opportunities at night to go out and explore the village. Tremblant is also not exactly in the top tier range of East Coast ski areas. I would say it's probably in the top 10 as far as skiing and terrain goes, but probably not in the top 8 or so. I would say you could definitely get better skiing most of the time in northern Vermont or, Whiteface, New York or Maine. But for the most part, it's a very good ski area that will keep most people happy. But if you want to do the very best or most extreme skiing on the East Coast, this is probably not going to be the place that you're going to want to go. Also, because Tremblant's lifts are so good and they have 7 high-speed lifts that people are going to be skiing all day, there is a lot of uphill capacity, and on more crowded days, there will be quite a few people on a lot of the main trails, especially because there are 5 high-speed lifts that go to the summit. It gets pretty crowded up there if you're there on a weekend or on a more major kind of holiday. It can get a little bit congested, but if you go a little bit off the beaten path, you're probably going to be okay. And lines can get a little bit long at the lifts, but it's not as bad as a lot of these other places with worse lift infrastructure. So even though I was there on a holiday weekend with a powder day, I never really waited more than 5 to 10 minutes. As far as lodges, this mountain is a little bit unique in that they have lodges, but a lot of the places that you're going to want to stop and eat lunch or go for breakfast are going to be different businesses that are down in the main base village. So there are a lot of really interesting restaurants that serve all kinds of food. There are literally dozens in the base village that provide a really excellent service and food. So I would recommend walking around until you find, a place that looks good. But as far as the resort-owned lodges, there is a large one at the summit that has kind of cafeteria-style food, a lot of seating, and really good views. Also on the north side, about the only thing down at the base is a lodge, and I haven't been in there, but it looks like they have kind of the normal resort kind of cafeteria food and as well as a restaurant. And there's also a cabin on the north side about halfway down that provides, soup and sandwiches for lunch. But really, if you're going to be at Tremblant, you might as well take a walk down the village and, find a different kind of a cuisine that'll be much more interesting and have a couple drinks and take a little break for lunch. As far as future expansion, I couldn't find a whole lot. They did put that new Lowell Thomas lift in about a year ago. Also, they'll be expanding the Summit Lodge to add some more seats and just make it a little bit bigger. They also got 2 new groomers in the past year. I'm not sure whether these were needed or not, but it does seem like Tremblant has very top-notch groomed runs. Also, they are adding about 90 new guns for the coming season, snow guns, so this will improve on an already excellent snowmaking system. Also, it looks like they'll be expanding 2 of the hotels down in the base village to provide even more overnight capacity. Overall, Tremblant is an excellent East Coast ski mountain, especially with the amazing pedestrian village And with the mountain as good as it is, I would definitely recommend going at least once for every East Coast skier. This place is really special, and the French charm and the amount to do after the ski day makes it very set apart from any other ski area, especially in the more remote places in Vermont and New York. This place is definitely more alive and more exciting than anywhere else you'll ever go on the East Coast.